Salute to the country he served and an unmistakable rebuke to President Trump. Two former presidents, once bitter rivals, offering their memories of Senator John McCain and lamenting the current state of politics.
It's a politics that pretends to be brave and tough, but in fact is born of fear.
John's voice will always come as a whisper over our shoulder. We are better than this. America is better than this.
Veiled swipes at the man not in the room, the man not invited, President Donald Trump. As dignitaries gathered to mourn Senator McCain, the president spent his morning attacking his rivals on Twitter and golfing at his nearby resort. The show of unity barely masking the deep divisions, setting the stage for the Labor Day kickoff of what is already a brutal midterm election season. A clash of political extremes is on full display in the battle for governor in Florida. A Trump-backed Republican, Ron DeSantis, versus a Bernie Sanders-backed Democrat, Andrew Gillum, fighting for control of the ultimate swing state. And joining me now is the Democratic nominee for Florida Governor, Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Let's start with the president himself, putting you in the spotlight and your race, of course, describing you this way in a tweet. A failed socialist mayor named Andrew Gillum, who has allowed crime and many other problems to flourish in this city. This is not what Florida wants or needs. You're now in a general election in a state that Trump won. You ran pretty far to the left in the primary race. In order to be governor, you need to win voters in the middle. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, well, Dana, let me first say how extremely proud I was yesterday watching Senator McCain's funeral. The comments from his daughter, Meghan, from the president, all the former presidents, really was a display of really who we are as a country. Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, are at the far other extremes of what we want, not only as a country, but as a state. And I'll tell you, I don't believe that any of the issues that I stood on in the primary are in any way disqualifying in this general election. We're going to win this race because the people of my state are interested in having an education system that their kids can get a good quality education. And right now we rank 40th out of 50th in quality. The people in my state want access to good and affordable and accessible health care. They want to see teachers paid what they're worth. And
I want to get to a lot of those issues and dig deeper on them in just a moment. Before, though, I have to get this out of the way. I don't want to give undue attention to this, but this week, a white supremacist robocall came out in your state of Florida against your campaign. You, of course, are the first black nominee for governor in the state of Florida. How are you going to fend off against attacks of what really are not just racially tinged, racist things like we're seeing there now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to tell you, I do find it deeply regrettable. I mean, on the day right after I secured the Democratic nomination, we had to deal with some of the dog whistles directly from my opponent. And I honestly want to sincerely say this, Dana. We can have a challenge between ideas and around what we think the people of the state of Florida deserve. What I don't want this race to turn into is a race of name calling. I want to make sure that we don't racialize and frankly weaponize race as a part of this process, which is why I've called on my opponent to really work to rise above some of these things. People are taking their cues from him, from his campaign, and from Donald Trump. And we saw in Charlottesville that can lead to real, frankly, dangerous outcomes.
And I also want to make clear that your opponent, Ron DeSantis, has condemned this robocall, which, again, we're not playing. It is beyond offensive. I want to talk about what the president mentioned also in that tweet, which is the crime rate in your city. Mr. Mayor, it is true that your county has the highest crime rate in the entire state of Florida. The number of murders there hit a new high just last year. How do you explain to Florida voters why they should trust you with their state when those crime rates are so high?
Well, I'm the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, not the county of Leon. And in the city of Tallahassee, we actually are experiencing a 5-year low in our crime rate. In fact, we're on par to see historic lows in our crime rate this year if we keep on the pattern that we're currently on. And Dana, we didn't do that by arresting more people and throwing away the key, but by leaning into smart justice, restorative justice, second chances, because the best way to control a crime rate, frankly, is to reduce the number of people who re-offend. We're very, very proud of, I think, the very progressive way in which we've addressed crime in my city, and it's evident by the numbers. I'm extremely proud of where we are, and frankly, frankly, I'd like to see those kinds of strategies scaled up all around the state of Florida.
Let's move on to health care. You mentioned that you support Medicare for all. A study earlier this summer from George Mason University estimates that Medicare for all, that plan, would cost the government $33 trillion with a T dollars over the next decade, which obviously would require a significant tax increase. Florida has a reputation, as you know, for being a tax-averse state. Are you ready to tell the people of Florida that they need to pay a lot more in taxes to fund your health care plan?
Well, let me first say there was also a report, Dana, that showed that should we move to cover more people through a Medicare for all system, we could actually save the system trillions over an extended period of time.
You could, but in the short term, in order to do
that,
that, you need to raise taxes. Fair?
So what I would say is, first of all, and I want to be clear about this, the state of Florida could not take this road by itself. We would need to do it as part of a federation of other states coming together. Think of Florida, New York, California,
but
and
sir,
a few of the other larger states.
in order to do that, taxes would have to be raised. Is that fair? Do you agree with that?
I don't buy that. So let me just say, for instance,
how do you do that? How do you find that kind of money for the government without raising taxes?
So first, I'd say, one, Florida could not do it by itself. But secondly, we have the opportunity to expand Medicaid for over 700,000 of the most medically needy people here in the state of Florida. My governor and legislature refused to do that. Do you know it costs us about $6 billion in money that should have come from the federal government to the state of Florida that we never received? And so I'm simply saying, and I want to be clear, Dana, this is very personal to me. I remember growing up as a kid having to wait for the mobile dental clinic to come through the neighborhood in order to have my teeth cleaned.
Yeah, I know. I know you have experiences, and you're coming from a real place, a personal place, in supporting this. But as a government official, you have to make it work, and you have to make the numbers work. So I still don't understand how you would do it without raising taxes.
So the first step we would take is expand Medicaid and pull down about $6 billion a year from the federal government. That's important. Secondly, as governor of the state of Florida, I would work to bring a number of the largest states into a conversation around how it is together we might be able to negotiate prices and access to health care to cover more people and ensure that even those of us who are insured, who are right now paying premium increases year over year over year, all because Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump have worked overtime to make access to health care less affordable.
Will you say that you will not support raising taxes to make your health care plan work?
I will absolutely not raise taxes on everyday working Floridians to give access to additional people.
What about wealthier people?
So what I said, and I ran on this, by the way, is that we will increase taxes for corporations in our state who right now, just so you're aware, only 3% of companies in the state of Florida pay the corporate tax rate, 3%. And that 3% under the Donald Trump tax scam got a windfall of $6.3 billion overnight due to the tax reform that took place in Washington, D.C. We're not asking for all of it. We simply said we believe that we ought to bring $1 billion of that money back into the state's government because being a cheap date state has not worked for the state of Florida. And unfortunately, we've got to do that if we're going to be a leading state.
One more issue. We've spent a lot of time, understandably, on health care and immigration. You have joined growing calls for replacing ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency. The state of California actually passed a plan last year to become a so-called sanctuary state, which limits state cooperation with federal immigration officials. Would you support that plan for the state of Florida?
No, what I would support is the policies of this current administration have been wholly misguided and, in my opinion, are quite un-American. Not one of us wants to undermine the work of ICE to do the important work of making sure that we end sex trafficking and human trafficking, making sure that we are precluding drugs and other sort of insidious entrances into our state. Unfortunately, this border crisis that the president created is all of his own making. We have not had the level of border crossing into this country since 2010. This is a straw man argument meant to speak to his base. It doesn't keep any of us safer. And he's turned this, the work of this important agency into a deportation and family separation force. And I simply believe that it's un-American. It also makes all of us less safe.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you about something that's going on back home in your city. There's an ongoing corruption probe into development deals in your city of Tallahassee since you've been mayor. I understand you're cooperating in that investigation. You want to see justice done. But this investigation has already breached your inner circle. Subpoena went out to your longtime friend, former aide. You're the mayor. Does the buck stop with you on this?
Yeah, so first of all, not a former aide of mine, but I will say this much. I nor my government is
He was a
under
campaign
FBI
aide, correct?
investigation.
Didn't he run one of your
A volunteer.
Okay.
Volunteer, not an aide. But the point being, though, Dana, is nobody wants more for any activity that is illegal or corrupt that has occurred